is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss, co-host of PBS's Motor Week. He'll take your calls and comments now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Or email him at radio@goss-garage.com. And now, Pat Goss.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Goss's Garage. I'm Pat Goss, and if you would like to talk about automobiles, anything at all, new ones, old ones, broken ones, whatever, if you want to maintain yours, give me a call. I'd love to talk to you. Number's 844-885-4677, and we can talk about it. Now, one of the things that I get a lot of questions on or complaints about, replacement catalytic converters. Now, like this email, I have a 2006 Ford Taurus. The check engine light came on. I took it to the repair shop, and the catalytic converter was replaced. Now, the check engine light is on again. Could it be the sensors? And this is where a lot of these things go wrong. One of the first lessons here is you have to remember that new, in any part whatsoever, new does not guarantee good. New only guarantees new. You see, that's why you have a warranty on things, because new parts can be defective. And when you do a diagnosis on an automobile, say there's a whole bunch of new parts relative to the problem, well, you assume as a technician, or if you're a do-it-yourselfer, you should assume that each and every one of those parts is old, beat up, battered, worn, whatever, and you test it exactly the same as you would one that was old, beat up, battered, and whatever. You never assume that new means that it's good and there's no reason to test it. So this business, could it be the sensors? Well, yeah, it could be, but that's not the first place that you would look. You see, you would look at the catalytic converter, that brand new catalytic converter that, in this case, there's a lot more to this email, but the catalytic converter, it was like 3 days old, and the light is back on. So why would that be? Well, it could just be defective, or it could be that the technician who installed that converter doesn't know how to break in a catalytic converter. Now, there is a proper break-in procedure, and it involves warming the engine up slowly. There's a special procedure. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but it is on a lot of the boxes, or you can get it off of the internet. There's a good article about it at Eastern Catalytic. Eastern is a company that I've featured on Motor Week a few times and so on. They manufacture catalytic converters, and they do a really good job of it. So you get this break-in procedure. If it isn't on the box, go online and get it and follow it to the letter. Don't start the car. Don't do anything at all until you get that break-in procedure, because the initial startup is critical. So if that's not done, the catalytic converter can fail in a matter of minutes or days or a few weeks. Before we started doing that here in the shop, we had a 30% comeback rate on catalytic converters that we installed, and that was horrific. And we were getting chargebacks. We'd send them in, and they'd tell us that, oh, this is installer error. They never told us what the error was, because back then they weren't publishing all of this stuff. So eventually, with digging around and talking to engineers and so on, I came up with it. And now I would say that our comeback rate is probably like 1/100th of 1%. I mean, it just completely did away with our comebacks on catalytic converters. So keep that in mind. You've got to do that break-in procedure. Now, above and beyond that, catalytic converters. Where do you buy them? Well, you can buy them at any auto parts store. The aftermarket catalytic converters are essentially the same as a new catalytic or brand new one from the dealer. I shouldn't say new in that manner because they're both brand new. There is no such thing as buying a used catalytic converter or anybody rebuilding catalytic converters or anything like that anymore. Now, the big thing that a lot of people consider, they know that the original catalytic converter on their car came with an 8-year, 80,000-mile warranty. So the converter goes bad. It's out of warranty. They go to the parts store. They get a price. They ask the counter person, what's the warranty on this replacement converter? And the counter person says, well, the warranty is 2 years, 24,000 miles. No. I'm going to go buy one from the dealer, even if it's more money. And you assume that the one from the dealer is also going to have, like the original one, 8 years, 80,000-mile warranty. But guess what? It doesn't. It's 2 years, 24. All the replacement converters are 2 years, 24,000 miles. So, buy the one that you get the best price on. And that doesn't mean the dealer is out of the equation, because in many cases we find here in the shop, we find that the dealer is the cheapest guy in town. All right, we're going to take a break. 844-885-4677 if you... All right, welcome back, everybody. Now, a couple of things. First, we don't have any calls right now, so I was talking about the proper break-in for a brand new catalytic converter. And so we have some time. Here it is. After the converter is installed. Now, this is very, very critical. You can't omit steps. You can't swap them around. You can't do anything. Now, what you do is you start the engine, but you do not touch the accelerator pedal. You let the engine idle and allow it to warm up slowly. Now, you do that for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you increase the engine speed to 2,500 RPM. Then you hold it at 2,500 RPM for 2 minutes, allow the engine to cool down, then road test the vehicle to confirm correct installation. And that is the way you break in a brand new catalytic converter. So that's something that everybody should be aware of. That should be on the box, but not all manufacturers do that. All right, now, another thing, we had a caller on this morning's TV show that was talking about nano products and all these things and miracle products, miracle in a can. But where are these things coming from? How good are they? Well, I don't know. I can't tell you they're good, bad, or indifferent. But what I can tell you is that historically, the more remarkable the claims for a particular product, the higher the probability of it being a ripoff. Now, the reason I say that is that if there is something truly new, something truly revolutionary, they're not going to be selling it with some kind of a pyramid scheme with people trying to hawk it to their neighbors and things like that. Why? Because they wouldn't have to. If they found something absolutely, truly brand new and exciting and revolutionary, it would be on the network news at night. It would be on there tonight. But you don't see that because these things are not new. They are not revolutionary. The majority of them that claim these unbelievable improvements in fuel economy or in the life of your paint or any of 1,000 other things that are supposed to be miraculous, and there's never been anything like it, well, that would be revolutionary, and it would be news. Okay, let's see. Let's go to Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to Goss's Garage.
Yeah, hi, Pat. It's an honor to speak with you. I've been watching you for years on the Motor Week program. And so my question is to you is that why did the manufacturers, like Honda, for instance, switch over on the smaller four-cylinder car to a timing chain versus a timing belt? I wish actually they would have had a timing chain on years ago because I didn't have to go through that huge expense of changing it. So maybe you could explain a little bit about that.
Well, the timing chain usually lasts the life of the engine, although we're seeing some manufacturers that are cutting corners on timing chains. They're building them a lot lighter duty than they used to. But the timing chain lasts almost forever, but it costs a lot more. And especially the Japanese manufacturers early in the game, they were making inroads into sales in the U.S. by having lower prices. And part of the way they achieved the lower price was by using a timing belt, which is immensely cheaper than a timing chain, both in building the engine and in the parts that are needed to put it together and make everything work.
Right.
So when you have a timing chain, you have to make the front of the engine oil tight and all these other things. So there's a lot of machining that's involved and things like that, where with a timing belt, you just have a cover that's open to the air and there's no machining, there's no oil passages, there's nothing.
Oh, so you're saying that basically that by having a timing chain might add like $100 or $200 to the cost of manufacturing that engine?
Probably something like that, something between $100 and $200, which when you look at vehicle manufacturers, and being a consultant to a couple of manufacturers over the years, I've been able to sit in on some of their accounting sessions and so on, and the bean counters, they will quibble over a fraction of 1 penny. And the reason for that is that you look at the millions of vehicles that they're going to build that use that individual part, and then the life of that part throughout, maybe 20 years in service and so on, a penny per part can mean many, many millions of dollars over a 20-year period. So when it comes down to spending $100 on a car, you got to get some serious benefits from that.
Right. Yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for the call. Yeah, that's something, thankfully, just about everything. Now, I can't think of anything that has a timing belt anymore. They're all chains, and what a blessing that is. All right, we need to take a break. 844-885-4677 if you have a question or a comment.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
All right, we have an email from Omar. Omar is in Arlington, Virginia, and apparently he was watching this morning's TV show. He says, you mentioned this morning on your TV show that some vehicles do not have a dipstick to check the transmission fluid. Is there any benefit by not having the dipstick? How would you be able to check? Well, Omar, Are there benefits? Yes, there are benefits to the manufacturer because, like we were just talking about, fractions of a cent being concerns as far as building a car is concerned. Here you have another one of those instances where it's relatively expensive. It's probably adds another $10 or $15 to the price of the car or to the cost to build the car. And what they found is, number one, that most people couldn't read the dipsticks anyway, the colors of the transmission fluid and so on, unless your transmission is poorly maintained and the fluid is nasty, you typically can't see it on the dipstick. So, you know, it was only for people who had really nasty transmissions that were probably on the way out anyway. But above and beyond that, you had people that didn't do it right because the car had to be warmed up, and that meant driving it at least 20 minutes and different things like that. So they'd pull the dipstick out and with the car cold, and they'd do it with it not running instead of running, and all of these mistakes. And next thing you know, they're pouring fluid into the transmission, and they got to make sure that it's right. Well, they're not checking it right, but they're going to add more fluid, because certainly if all else fails, adding fluid to something definitely helps. Well, no, it doesn't. Adding fluid to a full transmission makes it overfull, and when the transmission is overfull, certain moving parts inside the transmission can act like a blender on the transmission fluid. In other words, it whips the transmission fluid into a foam. Same thing in the engine when you overfill it. But we're talking about transmissions. So this foam, it means it has a lot of air in it, and because it has a lot of air in it, it can't cool properly, and the transmission overheats. And the life of a transmission is directly related to its temperature. In other words, you get a transmission to a high enough temperature, its life expectancy is roughly, 18 minutes or something like that. I don't have a chart here to look at, but get it overheated and it goes away in a red-hot hurry. All right, so they take the dipsticks out because everybody used them wrong, and they cost money to put in there, and people burned up their transmissions as a result of them, and they weren't accurate in the first place. So how do you go about checking the transmission? Well, the way you do it these days is on most transmissions, there's going to be a plug in the bottom of the transmission pan. Now, above that plug is what's called a standpipe. It's a little piece of pipe that extends straight up into the transmission. Right, now, you connect a scan tool to the computer interface on the car. You drive it until you reach the temperature that the manufacturer says is required to properly check the transmission fluid. And has to be that temperature because as the temperature climbs, the transmission fluid expands. So the level gets higher and higher. All right, so you get it to that proper temperature as indicated by the car's computer. Then what you do is you go under the car. The ideal thing is to have it up in the air because it's got to be absolutely level. And you remove a little plug in the bottom of the pan. Now, the standpipe in there is at what should be the proper level for the fluid. So if it's overfilled, you take that plug out and some of the fluid will run out until it seeks its own level. If it is underfilled, nothing will come out. So then what you do is you take a tool that is designed to put fluid into the transmission, you connect it to where that plug came out, you put some fluid in, and you overfill it slightly, and then you let it drain out until it stops draining. Now it's right at the very top of that standpipe inside the transmission, and it is proper. And that is how you go about checking transmission fluid these days. So, yeah, it's more complicated. But the other side of it is, on a modern transmission, there is absolutely only one way for fluid to get out of the transmission. You see, many years ago, you used to have a vacuum modulator that controlled shifting of the transmission. And that vacuum modulator was connected to the intake manifold. And when the modulator would fail, transmission fluid could be sucked up into the engine and burned, and you wouldn't have any signs of leaks. Well, modulators are obsolete. Transmissions are computer controlled these days, so there's no connection between the engine and the transmission as far as the fluid is concerned. So the only conceivable way for fluid to get out of that transmission is for it to leak out. And hopefully, if you pay attention to where you park and things like that, at least that's the theory that most people should and would, well, the only way it's going to get out, it's going to leak out, and you're going to see it where you park. No fluid on the ground, no leaks, fluid always remains at the proper level because fluid does not evaporate. So that's how all of that works. You know, it's may sound complicated, but really it isn't once you get used to it. You can email me at radio@goss-garage.com if you have a question or a comment and don't want to talk on the air. Oh, by the way, if you want to find the BG products that I talk about, bgfindashop.com, and enter your zip code and you'll get a list. All right. We're going to take a break. 844-885-4677. Give me a call.
Coming up, Pat has more of your calls at 844-885-4677. Or email the show at radio@goss-garage.com and Twitter #GossGarage. This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
All right, folks. I have an email here from Wildcat. And Wildcat says, I'm listening to your program and heard my comments regarding engine timing chains and belts and so on. Says he's heard that the 5.7 Chrysler engine is having problems with broken chains. Yeah, I've heard some information on that. But he also says the key to it is to do away with the cylinder deactivation. Well, I'm not so sure about that. Although I'm not a big fan of cylinder deactivation because I just don't like the feel of it and so on, and more on that in just a minute. But I wish I could tell you what is causing it. The couple that we have seen so far, and 3 or 4 that I've seen out in the field, there wasn't any question about what caused the failure of the timing chains in those Hemi engines. It was just lousy maintenance. You look at the crud that was built up in there and so on, and you look at the timing chain, and the timing chain is just crusty with caked on oil, and that doesn't happen unless things are running hot, and they run hot because of lack of lubrication. So you say, oh, okay, somebody hasn't changed the oil. Now, I can't say that that is the only cause or anything of the kind, but I can tell you that the ones that I've seen have clearly just been poor maintenance. The same thing I've seen with the cylinder deactivation on General Motors engines, where they have camshaft bearing failures and lifter failures and things like that. Poor maintenance. See, one of the things with these engines is that in order to deactivate a cylinder, what they have to do is on an intake valve that they're going to deactivate, they take the oil pressure away from that valve lifter. Now, the valve lifter has a great big spring in it that is strong enough to keep the lifter tightly against the camshaft and against the push rod, so there's no clack, clack, clacking going on. But it isn't strong enough to force the intake valve open. Now, the way they do that is they cut back on the amount of oil going into that lifter. So you have a reduced oil flow into the lifter during cylinder deactivation. And if you're not taking good care of your oil, now remember that as oil ages, it gets thicker. Doesn't get thinner like a lot of people think. It gets thicker and thicker and thicker. We run oil out or send it out for oil analysis, 20-weight oil. Lots of times when somebody's gone through one of these extended oil change intervals, 20-weight oil, when we send it out, may wind up coming back as 80 or 90. It's like gear oil. So you have dirty oil, you have reduced oil flow, and what happens? The lifter wears out, the cam wears out, different things like that. So a lot of this, all of these newer problems, they really aren't new. They're modified because of newer designs, but the reality here, there still isn't any better protection for an engine than oil, clean oil. There isn't any cheaper protection than changing oil. So you can save thousands of dollars just by stepping up your oil change interval to 5,000 or 6,000 miles instead of 10,000 or 12,000. Now, Wildcat also says he's heard that Ford EcoBoost engines are not getting the fuel economy that is suggested. Now, my answer to that is, what does? I don't know of much of anything that really gets the maximum mileage unless you're so gentle on your driving that it defies imagination. Now, he goes on to say that the miracle workers, the folks who perform miracles, things that are outside the laws of physics and so on the internet, they're going to correct this with a water and methanol injection system. Okay. Could that improve mileage? Yes, it could, but at what cost? Now, one of the things you have to remember is you start injecting water into an engine, unless it's done very, very precisely, and some manufacturers are looking toward doing it on their engines, but it's going to be controlled by a computer, like the fuel is controlled by the computer. So unless you do it that way, you stand a good chance of grenading your engine. Now, the other thing is you got to go buy some kind of a, jury rig kit and put it on. Then you've got to buy the methanol and all of this stuff. By the time you get done with all of this, even if it increased fuel economy by 1/10 of a mile to the gallon, it's going to take you the next 3,000 years to recoup your investment simply by the fuel savings. It doesn't make sense. All right, we need to take another break. 844-885-4677.
Coming up, Pat has more of your calls at 844-885-4677 or email the show at radio@goss-garage.com and Twitter, #GossGarage. This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
All right, now we had another question relative to or from Wildcat, and that was what modifications have I done to my 14 Camaro SS? Well, not a whole lot. Mostly they've been appearance things like altering badges to get rid of those ugly gold bow ties on the trunk and in the grill, converted them to chrome and black, and some things like that. Performance-wise, a computer to block the cylinder deactivation, because I put a Borla axle back exhaust system on it, and with the cylinder cut out, now that you can hear the exhaust, it is thoroughly obnoxious out on the road because it's switching from 4 to 8 cylinders all the time, and you can hear that, and it drove me nuts. So I put a Ranger computer in it to do away with the 4-cylinder operation altogether, and I gained a little bit of mileage as a result of that. Second thing, in addition to the Borla axle back system, I also put on a Corsa closed top cold air intake system, and looks good, sounds good. Nothing that I can really feel. I haven't done any testing with a stopwatch or computer or anything, but can't really tell that much about the difference in performance. So that's what I've done to it. All right, now we have another email here. How often do you recommend the BG Performance oil change? 2 years, 24,000 miles, not more than 30,000 miles. And that normally will take care of any problems that you might have with gummed up low-tension oil rings and things like that on these newer direct injection cars. All right, and George, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Good morning, Mr. Goss. I'm calling about the catch can that I believe you put on your Camaro, and I'd like to know if it can be put on other cars. I have a C55 AMG, and I'm just wondering if it would be something I would want to do.
Well, catch cans are good for just about any car. We're hearing a lot of these things about deposit formation in a lot of vehicles these days, especially direct injection vehicles. And this can help that, because any oil that comes through the crankcase ventilation system that would normally go right back into the intake manifold, that oil is caught in the catch can. Now, I used a Moroso on mine, and it's a kit designed specifically for my car, and I'll tell you how it goes later on, but it should do away with any problems. Now, the big thing that people don't realize here is that crankcase breather systems work from vacuum. And the vacuum in the intake manifold sucks the fumes out of the crankcase. Well, people who drive hard, when the accelerator is 3/4 the way to the floor, all the way to the floor, or going up a hill or something like that, you have zero vacuum in the intake. And that means that fumes are not going to be mixed as heavily with air, number one, because there's no air being sucked through there. And number two, you can actually have more pressure in the crankcase than you have on the suction line, so it backs up the inlet where the air is supposed to come into the crankcase, and that can push oil back into the throttle body and so on. So, there's a lot of reasons to have them.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very interesting.
Okay. Thank you, George. All right. Yeah, we'll cover the my catch can as we go along. All right. Chris from Manassas, 94 GMC van. Hi, Chris.
Good afternoon, Mr. Goss. Very great informative show you have there.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. I wanted to have an air condition question on my old 86 GMC van. We evacuated the system. I put in a new accumulator dryer, orifice tube, and the like, and put in one of those little small bottles of BG FrigiQuiet. And I've never heard you talk about that. And now that I have a 94 GMC van, I would like to install that fantastic BG product, FrigiQuiet, into the compressor that's in the 94 GMC van.
All right.
Do I have to evacuate the system first, or
no? What the way we do it, and you might be able to go to a shop and borrow their tool. There is a special tool. You put it into the tool, you put it onto the low side fitting, and this tool has a knob on it that compresses. You turn it, and it compresses the FrigiQuiet into the port and right into the system.
Okay, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Can I buy one off a Snap-on truck or something?
No, you could buy one from BG, but I think they're like $150 or so.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What if I were to bring? Yes, sir. What if I were to bring the van to you to have that process done, as well as you?
Yeah, well,
Is there a motel around there?
I would. Oh yeah, lots of them. I would loan you the tool for the 5 minutes that it takes, or whatever time the technician gets paid for to do it.
Very well. Okay, you can do it that fast then.
Yeah, it's real quick. Takes longer to put the FrigiQuiet in the canister than it does to install it in the car in most cases.
Well, I'd be daggone. That stuff is like a miracle chemical or whatever that is.
Yeah, it is. It's good stuff, for sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, and lastly, I heard you talking about that catalytic converter. That woman said, I think she had it installed last December, and it's failed on her already. All these fast muffler and exhaust shops around, they don't do that. I mean, it's at the heat of the summertime. You put on a new cat, you've got to let the car or vehicle cool down overnight and pick it up the next day, wouldn't you?
No, it just has to cool down for a couple hours. But without doing it, converter is a good possibility that it's going to go bad. So, all right. 844-885-4677. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment. This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
Hi, we have a follow-up question from Wildcat. Says, would I be hesitant to buy a car with cylinder cutout? No, I bought one. I own one. I have a 14 Camaro SS with the automatic transmission, which comes with the L99 engine, 6.2 liter with cylinder cutout. Now, had it not been for the fact that I changed the exhaust system on the car and could hear the change because the exhaust is a little bit louder now, I would have left it alone. I didn't have a problem with it at all because you really can't feel it. And on the cars that are properly maintained, we haven't seen any significant problems with them at all. Now, of course, synthetic oil, that's almost a must on any of these high-performance engines. A lot of them require it right from the factory. So, it's not something that you should really consider optional on most of them. Mobil 1 is usually the oil of choice, and so on. But if you don't like that system, then, buy one of these little computers that does away with it, and then you don't have to worry about it. But you still have to keep the oil changed because you have a lot of sophisticated parts in all of these later vehicles, and they have to have clean oil all the time. So, Anyway, that is my take on that, for whatever it might be worth. But yes, I have nothing against those systems at all. Well, my goodness gracious, it's about time for us to call it quits here. One more week. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to Terry Cornwell and Steve McMillan for producing the show. For everyone here at Goss's Garage, I'm Pat Goss. Until next time, hey, please drive gently. See ya!